came away with 5 core findings after our first Oakland hearing. 1, comprehensive planning strategies are critical for success. 2, more resources may be needed to help victims. 3, gun violence is a public health problem. 4, current legislation can be strengthened. And 5, new conversations are necessary. And many of those same themes were echoed during the Stockton hearing, which I co-chaired with Assemblymember Susan Talamantes-Eggman last August. Assemblymember Eggman will discuss some of the findings from the Stockton hearing in a few minutes and share some of the great successes that they've had in the city of Stockton, where she earlier served as a council member before becoming an assembly member. In addition to the select committee hearings we've held in Oakland and Stockton, and today's 3rd hearing, my office has also been working to support and engage the community in public safety and gun violence prevention efforts by convening a public safety advisory committee made up of individuals and leaders in the public safety field from all over the city and the district. The committee is made up of members of the faith-based community, public safety community, and nonprofit communities. We've met recently and are planning to continue to flesh out ideas for initiatives that we can work on together, as well as legislative ideas relating to reducing gun violence. One of the first ideas to emerge from our advisory committee, which is very interesting, is the idea of setting up a public safety academy to, 1, help make youth's first interaction with law enforcement a positive one, and 2, to help develop a long-term pipeline for law enforcement as a career so public safety officers reflect the diversity of our community. My office has already formed a subcommittee around this public safety academy idea, and that subcommittee will hopefully synthesize the idea and continue to move it forward. So while there are definitely good things and great programs happening in Oakland and throughout the East Bay now, the numbers show that our children, unfortunately, are still unsafe. And even more devastating than the robberies, homicides, and physical trauma that occurs on our streets is the associated emotional trauma that is affecting generations of children who are growing up parentless, unable to learn at school because they are literally and figuratively shell-shocked from the violence they have experienced. While our previous hearings summarized some of the unique issues facing Oakland and Stockton and presented a number of successful and efficient programs to address the problem of gun violence, today's hearing is a bit different in that we decided to focus on the youth impact of gun violence. We also decided to join forces with the Select Committee on the status of boys and men of color because of their efforts to address the disparities at the front end in the areas of education, health, employment, youth development, and juvenile justice to ensure that our young men are successful and productive citizens. It is unacceptable that a disproportionate number of young people who are African American and Latino are trapped in a cycle of poverty, prison, and disadvantage. What we are finding from the onset is that as early as kindergarten, nearly 25% of African American boys, 3 times more than their white counterparts, are already convinced that they lack the ability to succeed in school. In addition, by the 4th grade, 58% of African American children and 61% of Latino children in California score below proficient on the 4th grade reading test of the National Assessment of Educational Progress. For the future success of California, we cannot continue to have our young men of color fail, particularly when reports indicate that more than 70% of Californians under the age of 25 identify as people of color. Gun violence is undoubtedly a contributing factor to some of these negative statistics. It is our responsibility to address this problem and reduce the negative impacts that it has on our communities, particularly on our youth.